like I came in that door twice.
I don't know. All right, you ready?
Whenever you are. Yeah.
So I'll just, do I need to play the mic? No.
Do you want to?
Yeah, let me stand here.
Yeah.
Good evening and welcome to Financial Aid Night. I'm so excited that you are joining us this evening. My name is Kim McDonald. I'm the Director of Undergraduate Admission, and I really appreciate you coming in to spend your Wednesday evening with us to learn about financial aid. It's lovely. I'm so glad you're here. And especially those of you who are at road trip this weekend for coming back again this week. So thank you for that. And at this point, I'm going to turn it over to our Senior Director of Student Financial Services, Hillary Hillenbrand. And here's Hillary.
All right.
Thanks.
Well, thank you, Kim. I will do just a quick sound check. Can everyone hear me in the back? Get thumbs up. Great. Awesome. Well, I will pause because I noticed that Kim mentioned financial aid. We joke in our office that it's really financial aid, and I know none of you actually think that, but those in our office actually enjoy working in financial aid, so we call it student financial services as well. But hopefully this evening really is about helping you as families and as students kind of navigate what can seemingly be a very complicated process, right? And understanding where we are in the process right now related to financial aid offers, and hopefully, fingers crossed, by the end of this, we will have most of your questions that you might have percolating. We'll have those answered, and if not, we have plenty of time for any questions that you have. I know our admission team, we've got several folks here as well to help answer any specific questions that you all have through the process. So with that, we will go ahead and kick right off. So the very first thing that in our world families ask is, what is a financial aid notification, right? We get this page, what in the world does this actually mean? Well, the starting point is that every financial aid offer or notification or package, you might hear it called any of those things, those all mean the same things in the financial aid world. What it is it's a comprehensive package or a comprehensive document that is very student specific, so it will be specific to your student and your household information. It will be addressed to the student because it is their financial aid information, so it's not going to be addressed to family members in the house. It is also year specific, so all the numbers that are presented on a financial aid notification or a financial aid offer are for fall and spring terms, right? So it's the combined annual amount, but everything on a financial aid offer ultimately for UE gets divided up between fall semester and spring semester. Okay. That also means we do all of our billing for the university semester by semester. So everything you're going to see on an aid notification is done in annual terms, but it's actually the fall and spring amount. And when you're actually in the system and students are logged in, the breakout of that fall, spring is all listed there with that annual amount that you're used to seeing on an actual aid notification. It also breaks down all the estimated costs for the information that we know about the student at that time of creating that package. So it will include full-time tuition, full-time fees for the student, and that is for our tuition anywhere between 12 and 18 credit hours. So you just see one locked in for that academic year. You see that cost for tuition and fees for the 26-27 academic year listed. You'll also see housing and meal cost. Okay, this is a standard for housing and meals that your students have option to be entering into, but it might vary. It might be a little bit more for your student. It might be just a little bit less, but we use a very good average for our student population of what kind of costs you actually will see going in. And I hate surprises. Do you all hate surprises? You hate surprises, don't you? Yes, especially when it comes to money. No one wants to be surprised with money. So our office does as much work as we possibly can on the front end to make sure that the estimates that you're going to be seeing are very, very close. Now again, this is a static document, so it's just this one document that you get in the mail based on that time that we're sending that to you. But if you already know, my student's actually going to live in this housing, or they're looking at these different meal plan options, we have an online cost calculator as well on our website that is very robust, and that you can actually plug in all of the different options to see what it actually changes as far as that cost is concerned. So it's super, super helpful. And if you talk to anyone in our team, you're going to hear them say, oh, let's pull up our cost calculator and we'll walk through this with you so that you can see exactly where we're coming up with the numbers for you. We also include, and we'll go through some more detail, we also include payment arrangements, right? So you're going to see all of the information that's specific to the student, but then what are the arrangements that can be made for that outstanding balance? So we'll spend some time chatting about that too. My other favorite thing in my industry is the FAFSA. How many of you have heard of the FAFSA? Oh yes, this is making me very pleased indeed. Really, the FAFSA, or the Free Application for Federal Student Aid, is a demographic and income information retrieval form, right? And that gives students the ability to let schools know, hey, if I have any financial need in my household, whether that be through federal, state, institutional grant funding, or I'm looking at using some loan eligibility potentially. That all comes from the FAFSA. So we encourage all students to file that if you have not already done so for the 26-27 year. But it's going to be that full financial aid offer that we've sent, or financial aid notification, if you've received one. Fingers crossed you have a FAFSA on file, but it would be inclusive of everything we know, not only about merit scholarships and affiliation scholarships, but also need-based financial aid coming from the FAFSA. So now we're going to spend a little bit of time just doing a breakdown of what in the world do all these numbers actually mean as we go through. So on a financial aid offer, and we have our fine Jennifer Troutman up there for our admission counselor team, who is, again, as I said, they're there to walk right through this with you if you have questions. But on the financial aid notification, you'll see at the very top, it's very, very tiny, but all of your aid offers will look very, very similar to this. It will have that breakdown, as I said, of directly billed charges from the university. So things that we know a student, based on the housing status, the enrollment status of your student, that they're going to see, we know these costs are going to be on a student billing between fall and spring. So again, divided half and half over fall and spring. We know those costs will be there. So they're directly billed from the institution, okay? I will say there's not a test at the end of this, but just know I'm talking about direct here. We'll talk about indirect later. So that will include tuition fees, housing, meals, and books as well. So the university does have a book plan for book rental for our students. We know what that cost is. So we put it out there so that you as families and for you as students, you can know, here's what I need to expect to pay for my books and my materials, my course-related book materials for the academic year. So we have that cost already known. Now, if your student is planning to commute from home and they're in a commutable distance, and the financial aid offer is listed as with family, where we know they're commuting from home, they won't see that housing and meal cost on their estimated direct expenses because we know that's not going to be billed by the university, okay? As we go on, transparency is key as well. So we do a very, very intentional job of separating out what types of aid that are applying toward those charges are actually being reflective of. So the second section of the financial aid offer is going to include grants and scholarships, and we put in brackets specifically, there's no repayment needed. Okay, so grant funding and scholarship funding is considered gift aid, which means it's just helping reduce that bill that you see at that directly, or the direct expenses up at the top. So there's not repayment required for the aid that is listed there, okay? Anything that requires something beyond what the student has already done to receive that funding would be listed then in either loans or other self-help awards. So for loan eligibility for students, simply by filing the FAFSA, or the Free Application for Federal Student Aid, simply by filing that form and family members participating by contributing their information to that, the students automatically will receive an offer of $5,500 from Federal Student Aid to be eligible to use that funding toward their educational expenses in the academic year. So every freshman coming in is going to see some version of loans listed on their financial aid offer. It will never exceed 5,500, I say, for the vast majority of our incoming students. So that's a limit for dependent FAFSA purpose, dependent undergraduate first-year students. So federal student aid will have that blocked out that, yes, automatically you're eligible to receive that. It does not mean that you're required to take it. We're simply required to let you know that it's an option for you as you're looking at ways to cover expenses for educational purposes, okay? Now, some students, like in this case, it's very hard to see, but some students will see the loan broken out, that $5,500, be broken out into two different types of loan. This is where there should be a quiz because families get these two mixed up all the time, but there is a subsidized loan and an unsubsidized loan, okay? The subsidized loan is where the government is actually subsidizing the interest on the student loan on behalf of the student based on FAFSA information. The good news is that if your student has subsidized eligibility, we will offer it to your student. You don't have to do anything more to ensure that your student is receiving the best type of loan. We do that automatically for your student. There is a limit on how much loan can be subsidized of that $5,500, and so that limit is $3,500. So if you see really odd, or as I say in our office, wonky dollar amounts in the loan eligibility, it's based on the financial need calculation from the FAFSA, and that's all federally regulated. So we're issuing and giving the option for loan eligibility based on your student's specific information and their other financial aid eligibility. So the second type of loan is called an unsubsidized loan, and that simply means that the interest does accrue on those loans while the student is in school. Now, some students may never see a subsidized loan, or a student might see a combination, again, of some really odd dollar amounts, but they're not going to exceed $5,500 total in a student loan for your students. And as I said as well, transparency is key. We do, for the sake of everyone reading this document for the first time, we're calling out, this is a loan, it must be repaid, right? It's not repaid while the student is in school, but because it goes into a deferment period while students are enrolled in college. However, repayment after graduation will be required to federal student aid and that loan servicer. Now, this is something, again, it's going to be offered for students. They're not required to take it, but we're required to list it as offered for every student. There are other steps that they actually have to do in order to accept the loan, so they'll be well informed about what that actually means for their their future and repayment processes and all of those things. But just know, if your student sees this on a financial aid offer, they will have the ability to accept or decline that at whatever point they decide. Oh, let me ask this. Did you guys all hear I said they? This is a student loan, student. This is all related specifically to your student. So this would be a loan in the student's name. This is not tied to you as a family member. This is specific to the student and would be something that would actually live in their name, okay? Now, we do list then, again, we've double underlined it. Here's what we've got as our estimate, is the estimate balance due, taking the direct expenses that we know your student would receive, at least that direct expense there, minusing any scholarships or grants, gift aid that we know is not going to be required to be paid back, and if the student uses loan funding, so we have listed accepting all aid offers. So that amount does include if they want to use the loans or not, right? We're going to include it in there, just again to show every resource as an option for you. However, for families, many times families will say, well, we planned not to use the loans. Great, you can do one step up on the math, direct expenses minus scholarships and grants, and you'll have that estimated balance due really quickly there for you. Along with that, now I've mentioned direct costs that we know students are going to incur from the university. We also list what types of indirect costs a student might incur. Now, this is a kind of more, I think of it always as like a family's way to budget mentally for things that you may or may not have thought about when it comes to educational costs. So when you think about transportation back and forth home over break, right? There's going to be maybe a little extra gas money. There might be a flight or a ticket back and forth for move-in, depending on how far students are coming. There will also be costs for miscellaneous expenses, right? Things that are beyond the meal plan. When your student says, I need a little pizza money, or me and my friends are going to go out and do this thing. Could you Venmo me a little bit of money, right? I'm doing this like an old phone, just so you know, I didn't do this. That may or may not have dated me immediately there, but some of you knew what I was talking about. But those types of indirect expenses, right? So miscellaneous expenses, transportation, as well as you might see, it's very, very small here, but a direct loan origination fee. This is one of those things the federal government, if your student does use a loan, they want us to make sure that there's accounting for a little bit of a fee that they take off the top of that loan. It's built into that indirect expense for the use of the financial aid. So it's not a billed item. None of these items are billed to the student, but it is something to think about and kind of keep in mind as you're planning. The amounts for these are very, very budgetary, right? These are going to be very specific to your student when you're thinking about what kind of costs you might actually incur. So for a student, we use averages over the entire student population simply for that, again, kind of keeping in mind what should we be thinking about. But really for your student individually, if they're going to be maybe traveling an hour and a half to school when they move in, their transportation expense or kind of budget purpose is going to be a lot lower. So that's more on an individual as you're planning that out to say, what should we really be thinking about and building into the budget for costs for school? Now that we've seen all the components of that, and I'm going to talk a little bit about work study because it was on the bottom of that, but we'll talk about it here. It's really, what are the next steps, right? So you see a financial aid offer, you've seen all the scholarships and grants, you've filed a FAFSA, all of those things are completed. You know what that estimated balance due for the upcoming academic year is. So now what, right? How do we make the next steps of this happen? On the right-hand side of a financial aid offer, you'll see that take the next step, and it will have all of our little numbers, right? Review the financial aid offer, which you all have already been doing and working through that. Paying your admission deposit once you know that this is where you intend to attend, and it kind of kicks the ball off for all of the other things for the university, for housing and registration and orientation, all of that. And then step 3, we say, now you go in, you can log into our student portal for self-service and actually accept or decline the forms of aid that you really want to actually utilize for that academic year. Okay. Now, along with that, the accepting or declining of aid, before we get to kind of the breakdown of payment options, that accepting or declining of aid, we automatically have anything that is gift assistance, so any of that scholarship and grant funding, will be listed as accepted automatically in our student portal for you as students, okay? And I say this every year because it never ceases to amaze me. We automatically have that as accepted for your students because if your student is planning to attend, they want to be using the scholarships and grants, right? We would think that's logical. I have had an argument with a student in a very kind way about that very topic. So I had a student once come in and say, I can't decline my scholarship. I said, why would you want to do that? And she very quickly told me, well, my mom said she's covering everything. I say, I don't think that's what she meant. I think for sure she wanted you to accept the scholarships and grants. No, 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 she said, my mom said she wants to cover everything for school, so I need to decline everything. I said, let's talk with your mom on the phone, shall we? So we got a lovely little conference call going where the student was then informed, yes, no, we definitely want to keep that scholarship on the account. So there are actions that we automatically take on behalf of your students for gift assistance that it does not require repayment and there's no indebtedness related to it at all, so that they can't accidentally do something that they don't mean to do in the system, okay? Now, on the other side of that, on the loans, the student will have to accept or decline that loan. We don't do anything with it without student involvement on that loan, right? So if they never touch the accept or decline button, nothing ever happens on that loan for your student, okay? But there are actions that they would need to take in order to complete that process. My favorite, of course, then is number 4, which is celebrate. You're an ace. You've made all those steps. You've done all the checklist items. Everything is set, right? Easy peasy. We're done, right? Almost. Now we're going to switch over to the next step side of this for that balance due. What is it that you as a family have been planning for? How can you make sure that all of the necessary steps are in place for the things that you have been planning for to actually take place and be implemented and applied towards your student's account? So 529 payment arrangements can be made. I know many families have 529 savings accounts or some other educational savings accounts that have been already in the works for a long time, preparing simply for this time of your student finally getting to the college educational experience. Sometimes there's more than enough in that 529, and you say, we're prepped, we're ready, that's all we're gonna do is a 529 payment. Sometimes it was never the intent for it to fully be covered through savings. You say, we're gonna be saving along the way, and we'll use that as part of our resources to help cover the bill. But 529s are very, very standard for our office to help process. So most of the time, what they're gonna require is an online link out to actually select, yes, I want to utilize 529 payments. Those can come directly in toward your student's account. And later on, of course, in processes, students have access to this, families have access, so it's a very seamless process for that. But just know, everything that we talk about here, I say everything is not an all or nothing, right? Many families use a combination of these things as they're planning and preparing for college educational expenses. But 529s, if for some reason you would like to submit 529 payments just via check, the 529 providers, they will also just send those directly to the school in a check form if you don't do it electronically. So there's processes in place to make all of that very smooth. A lot of times families will ask about payment plans for educational expenses, and the university does offer a payment plan. It is a year-specific payment plan. So since financial aid is done year by year, billing is done year by year, right? Semester by semester, I should say. The payment plan options are also to take the 1 year of expenses minus 1 year of financial aid and break that up over 8 or 10 months over the course of the year, or in essence 4 or 5 months per semester. So it is planning to get your balance for each student. If they're on a payment plan, that gets the balance down to 0 before the start of the next term, right? So it's not a 5-year payment plan or anything like that. It's the academic year payment plan broken up, which is a lot more budget friendly for families, kind of just building that into your monthly budget and planning for that going forward. The cost associated for payment plans for families we keep very, very low, so it's $50 per semester that a student is on a payment plan, but there's no additional finance charge or anything like that that occurs on that. We have a lot of families who utilize our payment plan because it just makes things a lot simpler in planning for budgets. A lot of times too, when I say combination, I truly mean combination. We might have a family who says, we've got a 529 savings account and I'd like to make a lump sum payment from that and then break up the rest of the payments on a payment plan, right? The rest of that amount. So there can be plenty of combinations there. Our Federal Parent Plus loan listed, you'll see that on the payment options in the bottom right-hand side here as well. This is an option for parents of dependent students on the FAFSA, and the student would have to be required to file a FAFSA, and the parent can request to borrow in the Federal Parent Plus loan. Now, as I was talking about before, the student loan that we list on the financial aid offer is different than a parent loan, two completely separate topics, okay? Parent lending is in the parent's name, but it's borrowed on behalf of a student. So the parent still would have to actually apply for a parent loan, and they go through that process through the student aid website directly. It comes in just like any other form of financial aid. It comes straight to your student's account to help pay that bill. But many families will use this as well as a resource to help bridge some of that gap, depending on where they are in their savings plan for college and educational expenses. There are certain limits on the parent loan. I won't get into all the details because you all will not remember this when this time comes, but there are information on the student aid website and as well on our website too, with details about that. It does require a credit check for a parent to actually complete that application, but it's an immediate notification for families so that they would know, and you've got plenty of time on this if this is something that you're looking at doing, but you would know immediately when you apply if it's an approved or declined credit check for federal student aid. But this again would be in a parent's name. I also have many times had families who potentially in divorced or separated households Parent 1 can receive a parent loan. Parent 2 could also receive a parent loan. Okay, so you could have two different loans, again, both on behalf of the same student. Those get processed directly to the student's account, so there's no back and forth of where the funds actually go. We can also do that with payment plans too. We can have multiple payment plans going on a student's account for the same academic year, and I've seen as many as 4 payment plans. It might be a grandparent who wants to help contribute, 2 different parents want their own setup, and the student says, I'd like to make the rest of mine on a payment plan. So if you can figure out a combination of it, we can probably get it to work out in our office. The next we're going to talk about is private student lending. We do not list private student lending on the financial aid notification simply because it can be through any resource, and so there's a lot of different options on private student lending that's out there, and it's too much to put on a financial aid notification. But I will say again, our website has a really great several tools out there for students who might be looking at using a private student loan to help fund their education. One of the main differences on the private student loan, as you heard me say, it's a student loan. Again, so we're back in the student's name for students who are looking at that. With the private student lending, however, there is almost always, 99.9% of the time, a creditworthy cosigner would still need to be involved in a private student loan. So a parent or a family member or any other person who wants to help that student could be a cosigner on a private loan, but it is in the student's name. So the loan would actually be tied to the student. Next, and this is one of my ultimate favorite ones, is student employment or work study on campus. Many more years ago than I will admit, I was a student worker in financial aid while I was here completing my accounting degree, and I loved it so much. Obviously, I just stayed. But student employment on campus is a great opportunity. It allows students to work a small amount of hours, so not a gob of hours that they have to be worried about their education kind of sliding, but it is generally between 6.5 and 7 hours per week on average for students to earn about $1,000 per semester. And if your student has eligibility for work study, we try to put as many offers out there as possible on the financial aid notification. So at the bottom of that notification, we would say student employment. You saw that on the first slide there. But we list it for as many as we can, but if we didn't include it on your student's financial aid offer and they would be interested in doing that, have them reach out to their admission counselor or to our office, and we can check to see is it something that your student would be eligible for, or if not, are there other opportunities on campus that they might still be able to find a part-time job on campus to help with some of those expenses. The reason we don't include work study as being applied toward the bill for a student as well, we listed at the very bottom of the financial aid offer, is because students can authorize wherever they want their money to go for their work study, because it's just like a job on campus. So they receive a paycheck every 2 weeks. Just like everyone on campus, they're submitting time cards, so they earn that funding as they go to work and do their time cards. So your student may not jump right on it and get a job on day one, but they might a couple weeks into class say, yes, okay, I've settled in and I'm ready to find my job. So as they earn those hours, they could apply those toward their bill if they would like to, but they might also, again, just put them directly, those funds directly into a bank account for that spending money and those types of things. As I said, we are the Office of Options, so students can sometimes, maybe there's a negotiation in the house where a parent says, all right, you can keep half of your work study, but the other half is going towards your bill, right? You can do that too. So students can authorize whatever percentage that they would like on of their work study earnings to be applied directly to their bill. Work study is also a nice opportunity for students to be connected immediately, maybe not within their own department, but with other departments on campus through their employment. And that has always been a really positive, even for our office with our student workers. We get to know our student workers. If something seems a little off going on, might be coming in a little late on a day, they look a little bit more tired than normal, they have a whole separate community of people who are there to tag in and say, hey, what's going on? Come in and chat. Let's make sure things are going okay, or get you connected with resources to help. So work study on a campus, especially at UE, isn't just punch in, punch out. it becomes a whole nother support system for students as they're in school. So especially as freshmen, it's a great way to get them connected without officially connecting to things on campus. Last but not least, outside scholarships. So hopefully many of you have been looking at the bulletin boards at high school to see those outside scholarship opportunities that are there. Raise of hands for those of you who know outside scholarships exist. Yes. Fantastic. Apply, 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 and then apply some more, right? Those scholarships make a massive difference for our students coming in. The number of scholarships and the locations that they come from are always mind-boggling to me. I truly say that. I think we had a Bigfoot scholarship that came in recently. I said, where in the world do students find these things? But they're out there. And I will say, I think it's almost $1.5 million was brought in for last year in outside scholarships that our students are great students and they're earning that funding. So please encourage your students to spend the time applying for those scholarships. And they don't go away just after year one. There are still outside scholarship resources for current college students, so keep that in mind. There are fewer because, again, a lot of people think, I want to help a high school graduating student, and they create a scholarship fund. But there are a lot of outside scholarship resources out there. We have on our website a lot of information for kind of some of the big search engines that are free. But there are, I tend to say, I know some of our admission counselors say, stop saying this, Hillary, you say it every time. You're a bigger fish in your own pond than in the big national search engines, right? So think locally. Think of the things that your students are actually involved in, people that you know as family members. Ask everyone, is there a scholarship that you know about that I don't know about yet, right? You would be surprised. So ask, the worst thing that happens is they say, no, we don't know about anything. Okay, move on, right? But think about the time it takes for a great scholarship essay once that kind of gets curtailed and tweaked. It can be submitted so many times and is well worth the time when it's an extra $500, $1,000, $2,000 for an academic year. All right, so show of hands, how many of you have gotten a financial aid offer from us so far? Almost everyone, that's great. So for anyone who hasn't, I'm going to ask the question, when will I get it? Right? Well, as I mentioned, the FAFSA is kind of that starting point for getting that financial aid notification of that comprehensive component for students. But alongside of that, if you've already filed a 26-27 FAFSA and you haven't gotten something from us, double check that we're actually listed on that FAFSA. Your admission counselors, I'm sure, are doing outreach too. I know our team has done plenty of outreach to students about filing the FAFSA, but that's generally the very first thing, right, is to make sure your FAFSA is filed for the 26-27 academic year. For the state of Indiana, since I saw so many hands, that makes me very, very happy. But the state does have a deadline of April 15th to ensure that the FAFSA is filed for state grant funding eligibility. And we want all of your students to have as much eligibility as physically possible, right? So make sure you're not missing a deadline in completing that process. Another thing that might be holding up a financial aid offer at this point in the year is if your student, or if you as the student, are potentially auditioning with a talent. So if you're coming in and looking at the music major or potentially our theater department, those things could also hold up a financial aid offer, since we don't know what your final scholarship will be until you go through that process. Okay. I also know if you have filed a FAFSA, and as we say, there might be an edit or an issue on the FAFSA, our office will have done outreach to your students as well. We send that to the FAFSA email that was listed there, so students know there's something I need to correct. Phone calls will be going out from our office very soon for any FAFSAs that we've received that have an issue that we need resolved before we can send a financial aid offer. But if you don't have an offer yet, in essence, call us and find out why, if it didn't meet one of those criteria. Criteria 4, just hit me. Athletics. If a student is being recruited athletically at the university and their athletic offer has not been made final by the sport, our office would also be on hold with sending that out so that it is actually correct and accurate when we send that financial aid notification. All right, hopefully we've gotten through quite a bit, but I'm going to go through some of the frequently asked questions that we still receive in our office, so hopefully this pings true for a few of you. The first is, am I the only one who thinks that this is like learning a new language? There's a lot of terms thrown out here. Well, the answer to that question is no. They have yet to create a financial aid degree plan, but I'm working on that. We need people who understand all of this mess, but just know it's new to you all as families. It's okay. That's what we're here to help get you through all of it, okay? So any question that you ask, it's not a silly question. We're happy to answer those questions. And really for your students as well, if they have questions, we want them to interact with us too so that they truly understand what's happening for their financial aid. Will there be changes to my financial aid notification? Could a change happen? Certainly, a change could happen on a financial aid notification. There might be something that our admission team just finds out about for your student. Maybe some affiliation that was not known previously and gets updated. We're receiving changes and little updates all throughout this time of year as students are really digging into what's been listed on their financial aid and making sure that everything they think that they should be receiving is listed there as well. Changes to housing status, that's something that especially for our local students, that can change a financial aid offer. And on that main offer, we've listed there specifically what we believe your housing status to be, so listing all the cost information and financial aid associated. So if the cost information changes, financial aid information might change based on need financial aid. So just know that there can certainly be an update to that. Another component is if there was, again, an error on the FAFSA or something being adjusted there and we get an updated correction to a FAFSA, that would also change potentially a financial aid notification. So students get in paper a revised financial aid offer, and so it will say specifically revised offer enclosed, and it will call out in the text of that what it is that we changed. So we're not trying to make you figure it out on your own. We're going to call out specifically. It might be one that just recently happened was a student received an ensemble participation scholarship, and it wasn't included initially because they hadn't auditioned yet for that. So we sent an updated financial aid notification that said, this has been updated due to the addition of an ensemble participation scholarship for orchestra, right? So it might be listed that way specifically for you. But just know, if you get a financial aid notice and you're not quite sure what changed and you looked at it and you said, I still don't see it, call us and talk to us. We'll walk you through it. Now, a FAFSA, again, as I mentioned, is a snapshot in time, right? You're filing a FAFSA that has family information on it. How many of you remember what kind of year tax data it has on it? Anyone? I'll have a hint that you've got it right. Your number of these were correct. So what she was saying was it's prior year tax data, right? So it's 2-year-old tax data. So it's the 2024 taxes are on the 26-27 FAFSA. Okay. That means that sometimes families will have a very big change or even sometimes just a minimal change, but it might make a big impact for financial aid. So sometimes tax information for a family changes between the data that was actually submitted on the form and what by the time we actually get to school, what is actually the real situation for the family related to income in the household. So changes to that can certainly be looked at. There is a process that is called a special circumstance review that schools, financial aid offices specifically, have the ability to review and document what the change is. So if it is a change in marital status by the parents, it might have been a married status and now it's divorced or separated and the income in the household has changed dramatically. Those are types of things. We obtain documentation confidentially within our office specifically. We go into the FAFSA, authorized by federal student aid to do so, and we change it on your behalf to allow for the most financial aid eligibility that's possible. It's not something that families can do themselves to go in and try to make the FAFSA look like what their family situation is. Those have to be funneled through the financial aid office. But it can make a big, big impact for students. As your counselors are talking with you about financial aid, if those types of things come up, just know they're reaching out to our office to say, here's what I've heard. Is this something that might impact this student's aid eligibility so that we can get the best financial aid offer out to them? This is something that could happen at any point in the time of a student going to college, right? Not just their first year coming in. So keep this in mind that the FAFSA is just that snapshot. Let us know if there are changes. Many times it makes a difference, sometimes it doesn't, but we want to make sure we leave no stone unturned through the process as well, so just keep that in mind. The FAFSA also talks, or I shouldn't say it talks about anything, it doesn't really do that, but what it does do is it accounts for certain components of expenses in a household automatically. And medical expenses are one that we see from families on a regular basis, where they might have a large out-of-pocket medical expense in a particular calendar or tax year. So the FAFSA does account for a portion of traditional costs for medical expenses and healthcare costs, but things that go above and beyond that could certainly as well impact FAFSA information and therefore aid eligibility, always increasing aid eligibility, never decreasing it. But just recognize if your family is facing a struggle that you might think, it probably doesn't matter, just ask the question. Again, doesn't hurt. Let us be that determining factor to see if it would make a difference or not. We do a lot of preemptive checking and looking to make sure we're not putting you as a family through a lot of extra work for nothing. So we're doing some work on the background to say, will this be worth it? Will it not? Will it make a difference or won't it? Before we ever start the special circumstance process with you. But it is paperwork, it's a lot of documentation, but it can be worth it significantly in the long run. So reach out to us and let us know. Now, another burning question I know you all have. Do we get to file a FAFSA every year? Guess what? You do. You get to file one every single year. And we are here to help your students remember when it's time to do that every single year. Some of our work studies are actually going to be putting out our FAFSA filing time signs out around campus here because, again, this is that time of year even for renewal for students to make sure that they file every year. If for any reason your student hasn't filed the FAFSA, as we get really close to deadlines, they're going to get a text message, they're going to get a phone call to make sure they don't miss something for that. And as we speak about kind of the filing every year, that leads us to renewal, right? So everything we just talked about was about 1 year of financial aid, right? So what about their sophomore year or their junior year or their senior year? Well, for renewal purposes, filing the FAFSA is again that starting point. But we know based on your admission information, merit scholarships and those affiliation scholarships, whether they be, again, let's see, the Methodist scholarship or the essay scholarship that all of you students should certainly have been doing. And if you haven't, hopefully your family is going, what essay scholarship? What essay scholarship? But those types of things, those automatically renew every academic year for students as long as they're meeting minimum academic progress at the university. We don't have big, high GPAs that a student has to maintain their scholarships. Your students have already earned their merit scholarships from the university, and those will be retained year over year for them. The things that might change year over year because they're based on the FAFSA would be things like grant funding, specifically federal, state, and institutional, so you would see UE funding. If, however, the income information for the family has remained fairly stable and there's not a projection that it would be changing in the next several years, then those are very standard numbers that we estimate students are planning to receive those year over year for students. So again, all those reminders and renewals, that all comes out of our office. We're pushing that out to students to make sure that for your sake as families, they renew everything possible and that they meet all of those deadlines. So we've gone through a lot already. Hopefully we've touched on just about everything, but I'm sure you guys have other questions. So we will end with, what questions do you have for us? And Kim, I know you had the potential if anyone entered anything in the chat, but yes.
For the special circumstances, do we just email financial aid? Or
Yes, that starting conversation could just be an email, or you could give us a phone call. You could even stop in and we could chat through it. But in general, if that starting email or communication, what we're looking for is kind of an overview of what the situation is, who it's occurring with, right? If it's medical expenses, who's incurring that medical, what are some estimates of what kind of costs families are incurring, so that again, we can do some of that background. Most of the time, the phone call goes like this. Student Financial Services, this is Hillary, may I help you? And then we've got medical expenses. Okay, what year did they incur, right? What have you paid them already? Give me an estimate. What are we looking at cost-wise? Is it $2,000? Is it $7,000? Is it an ongoing expense that your family has just been trudging through, but we want to make sure it's accounted for here? And if it's something that we say, yes, this is something we certainly want to make sure we get to the bottom of, it'll be followed up with an email with instructions specifically and some forms to fill out with the documents, exactly what we need for your specific situation. So it won't just be a catch-all for everything. It'll be, this is the situation, it occurred on this date, and here's exactly what we need in order to make that review. Absolutely. And I've seen a lot of variety of situations come across. So ask the question, certainly. Yes?
So if a student does work study and they sign it over directly to the school towards their bill, is that still taxable and they have to file a tax return?
It would still show on a W-2 because it is taxed. Some students wouldn't earn enough to be required to file a tax return, but they still certainly could file so that they get any funding that they paid out in taxes because it is taxed. But regardless of how they authorize it, it is still a W-2 income to the student. Yes. Great question. All right. Going once? Going twice? We never actually end the question session. The question session is always open. So if you've got a question that you say, I'm not sure I want to ask that in front of the whole group, because I know that tends to be the case, I will be here. I know our admission counselors are here to answer anything else that is very student specific. And thank you again for coming out in an evening to spend time about financial aid. Thank you. And Kim, if you have any other closing for our team.
So at this point, if you have like specific questions related to your situation, we have counselors in the back, and they can work through those with you this evening, or if you want to, you can schedule a call with them. But we have some rooms out in the building, like if you don't want to have the conversation in here, that can all happen outside. Now, related to next steps, I know some of you have already paid your admission deposit, and so housing will open March 2nd. So students who have deposited, you are going to get an email March 2nd letting you know how to log on to the eRes Life platform to start that housing process. Please know there is a $75 registration fee to complete that housing registration form. For those who have not yet committed or made that decision, once you have, then you will want to pay that $300 admission deposit, and you can go to our website to pay that. You can always contact the office as well. And then from that point, your next steps would be you would start to get information about housing and then orientation and all of that. So all of that would follow. Any questions on next steps? Yes?
Admission, what is the last date you choose to come?
That is a good question. So the national, like the deadline that is encouraged is May 1st. Any other questions? Okay, well, one more, gotcha.
Essay, when is that due?
May 1st.
That's what I thought.
Yes. So if you need that link resent, so there is a link to that essay scholarship form. Your admission counselor can resend that to you as well, so you don't have to go find that. So if you need that, just let us know this evening. All right. Thank you for coming this evening. I really appreciate it. And again, please, any questions that you have, any of our admissions counselors can help. Hillary is still up here as well, and I can be available too. Thank you.
Yep.